This is my first book, Be Your Own Change Guru, The Ultimate Women's Guide for Thriving at Midlife. And in this week's podcast, I'm going to read to you the first chapter of the book, just to give you a little bit of a different experience and a taste of the book. I hope you like the podcast.
The Change Guru podcast is brought to you by my books, Be Your Own Change Guru and How to Find Your Purpose After 40. They're available on Amazon, and if you like the show, buying a book is an awesome way to show your support for what I'm doing. And now, here's the podcast.
The Change Guru. Listen up. You are the guru of your own midlife change. Gotta take it and own it. Don't be restricted by age. What's the number anyway? Live your dreams, don't hesitate. You're the change guru. You're the change guru. This is the time to step up, make your dreams come true. Whatever the change, it all starts with you. Whether it's life's purpose, relationships or career. Whatever the change, it's time to get what you want, what you really, really want. Make a change in midlife and still look really hot. Listen here, don't have fear. You're the master of your fate. You're the woman of the year. I mean it. Change your life forever. I mean it. It's not too late, no never. I said I mean it. Change your life forever. I mean it. It's not too late, no never, ever. Yeah. The Change Guru. All starts with you.
Hey everybody, welcome to TCG 2.0 episode number 32. I'm so glad you're here. It's Sue Paget, and my intention for every single podcast that I do is that I spark a flame in you. I kind of light your fire and let you kind of go, ooh, I never thought of it that way. Or, ooh, that's a cool idea. Or, ooh, I can do that. I just hope that I just trigger something that leads you into an amazing direction in whatever path you're taking in life. You know what? This is a good time for you to make an intention too. I mean, what would you like to get out of today's podcast? You probably seen by the title that I am going to be reading the first chapter of my first book, Be Your Own Change Guru, The Ultimate Women's Guide for Thriving at Midlife. And one of the reasons why I want to give you a little bit of a taster is because I'm going to be issuing the full audio version of my book soon. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of an example of what it's going to sound like. And this book was a game changer for me. It really lays out how to make change in your life, especially at midlife. It is something that I lived and I breathed. I think that's right grammatically. I'm not sure. You get the point. And it's got me to where I am right now, doing what I absolutely love, and that is chronicling my adventure through midlife and sharing everything that I learn and am discovering with you along the way. So that's my intention, and I'd love, your intention. You can say, okay, my intention is to kind of pay attention. My intention is to get an answer to a question on my mind. Like I've said before, the cool thing about setting an intention is that it's like when we take responsibility. I'm taking responsibility to say, hey, I'm going to deliver some value, and you can take responsibility and say, hey, I'm going to get some answers to something. So I'm going to do a little bit of business, and while I'm doing some business, why don't you think about what's your intention going to be when you're listening to this podcast? Business. Hey, do you need like a book that is going to help you change your life, help you navigate the stormy seas, the stormy and sometimes the calm seas, and sometimes the exciting seas of life after 40, then got to get my books. Come over to Amazon and check out How to Find Your Purpose After 40 or Be Your Own Change Guru. You can actually go there to Amazon and you can just get a sample chapter delivered to you straight on Kindle. And you can download Kindle for your computer. You don't have to have the device. I've got Kindle on my iPad. I've got Kindle on my iPhone. I've got Kindle on my Mac. You can download it. It's really just an app, Kindle. So if you want to just have a little taster, go ahead and get just a sample chapter and see what you think. But these are life-changing books that I I used the techniques. I still use the techniques. I really stand by them. And they're like having a life coach in your pocket, a life coach that really gets the challenges, not only gets them on a lot of prongs, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, all the different things that we need to just be, all the pieces of the pie to be a nice, full midlife pie, over 40 pie, right? So that's one way you can support the show. You can come over to my website at thechangeguru.net and sign up for my newsletter. It's not spammy. I'm not selling a whole bunch of stuff. All I'm doing is I'm giving you some cool messages and observations about life that I only share in email. I also drop some presents every now and then, and it's kind of for a first stop shop for the new things that I'm doing. So if you go to thechangeguru.net, you will see a little opt-in form for that. Connect with me on social, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. All of those are over on my website at thechangeguru.net, so you can find them all there. Of course, don't forget YouTube and iTunes for my weekly vlogs, and of course these weekly podcasts. All right, let's start talking about Be Your Own Change Guru. So I'm going to be recording my books, and I think it's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to doing it. A lot of times when people do audio versions of their books, they have a narrator do it. But I actually like listening to the author read their book, and what I want to do in my audio versions is also sometimes go a little bit off the page and just inject a little bit of extra, some footnotes in there. So even if you already have the book, I think you're going to get something a bit different. And what I love about audio stuff too, I've mentioned it before in podcasts, is that this is stuff you can multitask with. You can walk, take my books for a walk and just let them move your body, and at the change your physiology, and at the same time learn something new. So I think they're really perfect for walking and working out, and also filling up that dead space. And by dead space is the time when you're doing the dishes, or the time when you're putting your makeup on, or the time when you're cleaning house. Sometimes it's good actually to have nothing in your ears, to be, just trying to focus, be really mindful of just doing those things without any kind of stimulation. But other times, this is the time to really make use of learning. So my hope, and commuting too is another example of just kind of dead time. So I love the idea of either reading or learning something, and that's what I would love to achieve with the audio versions of these books, that they kind of fill space and give you inspiration in a way that really works for your lifestyle. So in the audio, when I do the books, obviously I'll take breaks, and hopefully you won't notice them too much as I sip water and things like that. But I think, is it okay if I record this podcast just with sips of water and clearing my throat or whatever needs to be done? I'm sure it's fine, right? So I'm going to take a sip of my water right now. Very good. You can sip water too. Now's a good time to be drinking water while I'm talking. Okay, I'm going to read to you the first chapter of my book called Be Your Own Change Guru, The Ultimate Women's Guide for Thriving at Midlife. And this is chapter 1. Are you ready to make a change? Is there something that you've wanted to shift, maybe for years, maybe for your whole life, but for whatever reason you've never been able to work out how to do it? Or does the idea of making change feel so overwhelming you secretly have hoped it would just go away? Well, you're not alone. In fact, that's how this book was born. It came from my own desire to make a big life change combined with the absolutely desperate feeling of having no idea of where to start. Now, this need for change wasn't just an out of the blue, let's shake things up a little bit type of change either. This was a deep need to make a shift that had been brewing inside me for years. I knew something wasn't right. And even worse was I had no idea how to find out what it was or how to take action and address it. I guess there was a part of me that hoped somehow this mystery would magically resolve itself, that a person or situation would make it all go away. But that magic wand never appeared. Instead, because of forces of nature, I came to the realization that I was the one who was going to have to come to my own rescue. I was the one who would have to finally face up to my stuff. And the catalyst, that force of nature that would make me once and for all deal with something that had weighed me down for years, was one of the major milestones in any woman's life. Whether I liked it or not, I was 47 years old and I had reached midlife. Little did I know at the time that the seemingly sudden urgency to confront a challenge in your 40s is all part of the midlife process. It's the stuff that the old cliche midlife crisis is made out of. For some of us, this need for a life change can be exhilarating. For others, change at midlife can be confronting to your whole identity and scary as all hell. But for others, the need to change at midlife is met with the old classic attitude of it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I'm sure, just to go off the page a bit, I'm sure you know people in your life who are like that. So what was the change that I wanted to make? I wanted to find my purpose. I wanted to know why I was on the planet. I wanted to make a difference, and I had no idea how to do it. And in my late 40s, with 3 children at various stages of early adulthood, a strong marriage, and a decent career, this need seemed completely insane. I mean, wasn't it enough for me to be a mother? Wasn't it enough for me to be a wife? Wasn't it enough for me to be able to have a decent job? But for some reason, at this key age, I started to twist the questions around trying to find answers. The more I thought about them, the more lost I got. Who was I if I wasn't a mother? Who was I if I wasn't a wife? Who was I if I didn't have my job as a way to label myself? When I asked myself those big questions, I would come up blank, and I started to get very scared. I got scared because those questions were along the lines of the questioning I had asked myself my whole life, even as a little girl. I just couldn't believe that any of us were put on earth to just be born, grow up, get married, have a career, get old, get sick, and die. I couldn't accept that that was all there is in life, and I assumed, even as a young girl, that one day all would eventually unfold for me. Something would transpire which would let me know my reason for being on the planet and how I could make it a better place. Now, this is a common thing, isn't it? I mean, who doesn't want to fulfill their purpose? Who doesn't want to have a really big reason for being here and going through all the things that we go through? So I went through my life with an expectation of a higher purpose. And, in some ways, many of these things fell into place perfectly. I married a wonderful man. We had 3 really great kids. While doing the mom thing, I juggled a career in the media, first starting out as a writer, and then moving into TV as a researcher and eventually a producer. Now, while television producing can seem like a glamorous job, and admittedly, it did have its perks, I constantly found myself feeling unsatisfied and uncomfortable in the role. It seemed like I could never get into the perfect situation. Either the people I worked with weren't a match for me, or the type of programs and work I had to do would make me question my ethics. It was like I was walking around in a suit that didn't quite fit, but it kind of looked okay, so I just had to put up with it. And just to go off the page, I was a producer for reality television. And as much as I do love some aspects of reality TV, I was working on shows that really compromise my morals and principles. I mean, I feel nauseous when I think about what I was doing, but I also felt like I was, had this career that had some nice status to it. And I just couldn't think of what else was out there for me. So I had this real clash going on of feeling like I should be doing it with a part of me going, this is not good. Now, the dream that I had of one day doing something that made a difference hung over my head. My logic about it at the time was that something would happen. Some cool job would eventually come my way in the TV industry that would really be my opportunity to do something special. But as time went on, the jobs I began taking seemed to completely contradict my core beliefs. The possibilities of doing something important with my vocation began to fade into the background, and I'd all but given up. To be honest, by the time I was in my mid-40s, I was too busy to even remember I had a dream. I'm sure there's so many of you out there that can relate to this. My 3 kids had turned into teenagers. Some of you might have kids that are even younger, and you're just totally juggling. Like most mothers who are working full-time, even with the support of my husband, I was exhausted, burnt out, and felt stretched to the limit. But something else was happening. I noticed I was feeling completely angry and on edge and anxious. I started to feel the physical signs of mini panic attacks. I went to my doctor for a checkup, and she told me that everything was fine. None of it made sense. I had a regular yoga practice. I walked regularly. I ate well. But here I was with my emotions starting to turn on me. I didn't know what was going on. So on one day off, when the house was quiet, I plopped on the couch and turned on Oprah Winfrey's daytime talk show. The theme of Oprah's show was something along the lines of, if you're a woman over 35, you must watch this show. Oprah's program was dedicated to perimenopause, the hormonal transition that eventually leads to menopause. Her guest was Dr. Christiane Northrup, one of the pioneers of women's health, who explained that from as early as the late 30s on, but most commonly around the mid-40s, women begin to experience a host of symptoms that could range from the typical aspects we associate with menopause, hot flashes, night sweats, etc., to mood swings, anxiety issues, and dark nights of the soul that revolve around self-esteem, your relationships, and your higher purpose. To say that this seemed like this show was aimed straight at me was an understatement, and while I was intrigued, I was also stunned. Why didn't I know this? Why did I have to learn it from a TV talk show? How could it be that I was in the middle of a pretty profound biological stage of life that I clearly knew nothing about? So while I sat watching the program, trying to take in the science of it all, the one thing that Dr. Northrup mentioned that took most of my attention was the medical, physical aspects of midlife. She said something along the lines of, anything from your past that you haven't dealt with will absolutely make itself known during that time. For me, this was what Oprah would call an aha moment. I live in Australia, and down here they like to say the penny dropped. I thought deeply about Dr. Northrup's words. It didn't take long for me to get that there was a reason for the anger and the edge I'd been feeling. It was that purpose thing. That belief in myself that I had pushed aside now was knocking on my door, letting me know that it was time for me to make some changes. It was time to face the hard, cold facts that the career I was devoting all my time and energy to was not giving me what I needed, and that now was the time to start paying attention to that. But where to start? Where do you begin when you have to make a really crazy change? And I say crazy because, how nuts does I want to find my purpose sound? To me, getting close to 50, wanting to find my purpose not only felt crazy, it felt scary. Why scary? Well, I realized that I was in unknown territory. No one had warned me about this time in life and how it brought up intense feelings. My friends who were about the same age didn't talk about it. My sisters didn't talk about it. My mother certainly never spoke about her experience with perimenopause. For me, the mere knowledge that I was going through a stage of life that I knew nothing about but could see that I really needed to get a handle on was a confronting time for me. It was a wake-up call. What was happening to me at this time is what I'll share with you later in a chapter called Awareness. It's the first step towards making lasting change at midlife. The first thing that I did with the awareness that I was in the middle of perimenopause was to get knowledge up. I read Dr. Northrup's books and everything else she created, and you should too. Visit her site at drnorthrup.com. And off the page, she's also has a new book out, Goddesses Never Age. She's just constantly leading the way as far as our evolvement as women. She blows my mind. So she is a must part of your arsenal for living an amazing life. I was absolutely intrigued by the key insight she'd shared on the Oprah show, and that was that any issue, be it physical, psychological, or metaphysical, that hasn't been dealt in the past would really come to the surface at midlife. That fascinated me. I mean, little did I know that this impact would actually result in a passion to help empower women at midlife and to show them all the possibilities. In going through this challenging time and by getting to the heart of what my body was trying to tell me, I had stumbled upon the elusive purpose I had been so desperate to find. And as I began to dig for information about perimenopause, I discovered this was a far more complex stage of life than I first thought, affecting more women than I could ever have imagined. I began confiding in my close circle and hearing their stories. I spoke about it with strangers. As I listened, it was like some weird veil was being lifted, and I began to realize that my big thing, the dilemma of finding my purpose, was just the tip of an iceberg of issues that surfaced for women at midlife. Here were some of the things that I learned. Relationship issues. Divorce rates soar after 50. In fact, it's a phenomenon that's been given its own name, the gray divorce. And forget the cliche image of men with toupees buying red convertibles and ditching their wives for their 20-something secretaries. The latest statistics reveal that it's women who are the primary instigators of divorce. Something clearly was happening that was causing women to leave their marriages or to consider it. And this got me noticing that relationships on a whole were at a tipping point for many women at this age, not just the married ones. For my single family members and friends in their late 40s, this was a time of having to come to terms with dating people with baggage, and that finding and keeping relationships at midlife had a new level of complication. Empty nest syndrome. Women who had devoted their whole lives to being mothers were now starting to feel lost in their surroundings as their kids were growing up and gaining independence. It's no wonder that full-time mothers get nervous about the future, because where empty nest used to mean a time that coincided with retirement, it now means having almost a whole other lifetime to live. And that means trying to work out what to do with that time. What do you do when you think that all you know is being a mother? What do you do when you feel like you don't have the skills or the confidence to get a job? And then there's I'm sick of being a mother syndrome. Maybe it has to do with age and 20-ish years of being a mother and all the traditional things that go along with it. But I can count myself as one of those who is over having to continue a caretaking role for my young adult kids who were still at home. We all know that times are different and many kids are leaving the nest later than our generation. But for me, this meant that I felt in a position where I still had to do the mom thing. And it left me and the many women I spoke to resentful. And then there's fertility reality check. On the flip side, single women I knew who had devoted their whole adult lives to building successful careers were having to confront the biological realities of having children later in life or not having children at all. Was this a dream that they could still hold on to? While trying to work out the ifs, hows, and whens of having a baby while the clock was ticking, the idea of leaving or reducing hours at work so they could experience life balance was often too overwhelming to think about. And then encounters with the fragility of life. After 40, we begin to confront our mortality, whether it's through experiences with friends, loved ones, family, pets, or ourselves. Many of us are now having to consider caring in some way for elderly parents, whether it was part of the plan or not. And just off the page here, if you haven't listened to my podcasts where my husband Dale and I have chats with my mother-in-law Leonie, who's going through Alzheimer's, you'll definitely see what I mean in this section. Moving through the realities of loss and grieving while we go through the physical process of perimenopause often results in a battle to stay optimistic and emotionally grounded. And then there's those of us who are clueless on health. Ask any woman at midlife on how her hormone levels are, and chances are you're going to get a blank stare. One of the most frustrating things about going through perimenopause is that there is no clear and concrete roadmap for what we're supposed to do to look after ourselves. Think about it. When we're pregnant, we know to take our folic acid supplements and to cut out alcohol or coffee and to massage our bellies with oil and to go to prenatal classes. There's a general method to it all, regardless of how different we are. But midlife feels like a do-it-yourself process. There are no obvious rules of how to move through it. We have to actively and radically become our own health advocates. A healthy perimenopause is all about trial and error and requires a personal diligence. Lack of knowledge can set us up for a host of problems. If we're not careful, we can fall into a habit of self-medicating with alcohol or antidepressants as coping mechanisms to ease anxiety or help us sleep. Lack of knowledge can keep us from getting a handle on weight and skin changes. Without a clear idea of what's going on with our bodies, it can almost feel like they're turning on us. And just a reminder, if you haven't signed up for my newsletter at thechangeguru.net, I'm going off the page here. I have a thing called a wellness journal. It's a free download, and it's literally examining your physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental health for 30 days, just to be able to start tracking the impact that hormones play on your life, that stress plays on your life, just looking or taking a really hard look at all your levels. And I think that you'll find, if you follow it, that regardless of whether you're able to find a doctor who's supportive at perimenopause or not, this will help teach you what works for your body, what doesn't work for your body, what's in balance, what's out of balance, and as a way to really take control of your health during this time. So if you go to thechangeguru.net and fill in for my newsletter, that's one of the first things that you get for signing up. Another thing that I learned about this time of life was feeling invisible. From very early on, we've been socialized to consider that the way we look and how attractive we are to others measures our value as women. Well, we've also been conditioned to connect beauty with youth. Beauty as we age is something most of us definitely haven't been taught to see or to look for in others, let alone ourselves. For women who've depended on their looks to provide self-worth, the physical changes of midlife can feel very confronting. So these were just some of the midlife choices and challenges that I found were on the minds of women over 40. And whether core problems seemed to spring up from what was happening to us hormonally, or everything was just clashing coincidentally because of our age and circumstances, it seemed clear to me that midlife presents some strong and consistent themes that cause many of us to ask the big questions like, what can I do to change at midlife? And how can I make life better? And where the hell should I start? So that is chapter 1 of my book, Be Your Own Change Guru, The Ultimate Women's Guide for Thriving at Midlife. You can find the whole book in print and Kindle format at Amazon. And as mentioned, soon it will be available in audio format. And I really look forward to being able to make that available to you. All right, that is the podcast for today. Let me share with you some ways that you can support the show. Obviously, you can pick up a copy of the book. You can also go over to iTunes and rate me and review me, give me an honest review on iTunes or Stitcher. This helps me so much in being able to help people find me so they can be able to get this information. And it helps me make a case for if I want to get advertising to support the show, they can be able to say, oh, people are really liking you and responding to what you're doing. So this, by you just sticking your neck out a bit and rating me, it just helps me out so much. Of course, other ways you can do are to get involved in what I'm doing. Come over and sign up for my newsletter at thechangeguru.net. Get on my social at Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Instagram. Those are whatever way works for you to connect with me. Come on and do it. Let's connect with each other. All right. Hey, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I look forward to recording the whole book. And of course, I look forward to talking with you next time. Until then, bye for now.